I see two overlapping figures, and I couldn't make them out. I knew one was a male, female probably. I knew it was humans. And as my gun comes around with my light, I see the tip of his gun, and as soon as I see it, he shoots. And I felt the hit in the leg. I knew I was hit, so I immediately returned fire. He dives out of the way. As I go behind the door, I get off 2 more rounds. Unfortunately, Brianna followed him, or tried to follow him into the bedroom where the coward jumped out of the way and left her hanging there. And she got struck by the bullets that were meant for him.
What's going on, everybody? It is Anthony from #BeTheChange. Truth will set you free. And of course, now Blunt Force Discussion. I like that little countdown music. I was watching the Cheyenne Days rodeo this last week, and it popped on in the background. I was like, that sounds familiar. And I was like, I feel like I'm at home. So we're going to have a really fun episode jumping into some stuff that is not really fun, which is the current state of policing in this country, the confusion with media, how people are gaslit and manipulated, and how it's leading to what could be the peril and end of the United States of America. I went a little too hard there, but it's some serious stuff, and I'm honored to have this guest with us. As always, as I like to remind you guys to start the show, this is fully self-funded, so please go to patreon.com/BluntForceDiscussion if you want to help out the show. Anything helps. If you want to be an advertiser, etc., we've got a couple. And also, we've got some cool gear, so if you like some of the stuff, the Awake Not Woke stuff, go to awakenotwokestore.com. I'm wearing my I Will Not Surrender shirt today. I thought it was fitting. For who our guest is, as they definitely did not surrender, and they have continued to lead their life in a way of helping police officers. So let's get to the conversation. We have got Sergeant John Mattingly as our guest, retired 21-year veteran with the Louisville Metro Police Department out of Kentucky. I think we know where Louisville is. He's got a really interesting story, and he has been willing to speak out about what happened with Breonna Taylor. How am I pronouncing it? Brianna?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Breonna Taylor. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant John Mattingly, welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. Good to be here, buddy.
Thank you for coming on the show, and shout out to Nikki for making this happen. I know she's been in contact for you. How did she get you to agree to do this?
And she just reached out on Instagram, and we started talking, and she told me what you had going on, and I was going to be close to the area, so I said, well, let's do it. And she made it happen through you, and here we are.
I think when I was talking about starting the show, I think you were the first person that she was in contact. She's like, Anthony, do you know who I'm in contact? I think that he'd be really good on the show. And I was like, Officer Mattingly, why does that name sound familiar? And then it all made sense.
She started contacting months ago before you even started this podcast.
Yeah.
So she was laying the groundwork. She did a good job.
Yeah, she's awesome. So you have real world experience of what was one of the I would say George Floyd was probably the biggest story of 2020 in terms of social justice, take away COVID. I would say Breonna Taylor was number 2 in my opinion. And just massive amounts of changing information on that one. So what today is going to be to start is properly explaining the scene and properly explaining what happened and what your role was in it. And hopefully, even if it's one person that can maybe get informed correctly about what happened that day, that can help us out. So let's just get started with the call that will live in infamy, to be very clear. How did that night start out?
Well, it started out with the brief, which was actually Thursday the 12th, and that rolled into Friday the 13th, which happened to be a full moon, raining. Anything that goes sideways just did that night. Just sometimes things go that way. But we were asked to help. We weren't even the lead on this case. We were asked to help because it was a manpower-intensive deal going down. They had 5 different warrants going at the same time, so you need a lot of bodies for that. So the unit that had this deal reached out and said, hey, can anybody help? So I responded and yeah, we'll help. Me and some of my guys will help out that night. And so we came in, we did the brief, we went to the location, and a little bit after midnight is when SWAT was moving on the other locations, and they said, all right, let's get going. So we mounted up and we rode up to the scene.
So the other locations, and I think it's important to talk about this because it all had to happen at one moment because
Correct.
it was it a drug ring? Is that essentially what you guys were?
Yeah, it was a little organization, not huge, but several guys involved. They had a couple trap houses down on Elliott Avenue, another baby's mama house down on Muhammad Ali. They're all in the West End or in the ghetto part of town. Then you had Breonna Taylor's apartment, which was out more in what we call the South End. It's more of a diverse community, white, black, Hispanic, a little bit nicer area. That's where she lived, but that's where she was holding the money for different drug dealers. And that was all revealed later on jail phone calls from Jamarcus Glover, who was the main target in the case, who had the 2 trap houses down on Elliott Avenue.
So it has been confirmed that she was there money, because again, we don't get, the general public doesn't get the information. Was there actual money found in her apartment?
Not by the police. So 2 things happened here. When we went to the door, we never made it inside the premise. The narcotics unit didn't. And we had a narcotics search warrant. So after the shooting, our public integrity unit comes in, and then they take over the scene. So now it's not narcotics, now it's the public integrity, and they are investigating the shooting. What they do is they draw up their own warrants. They come in and they look for ballistic evidence, blood, casings, anything they can find that's related to that shooting incident. Now, they said they went through some stuff, but they don't search like narcotics guys search. We look in attics, basements, under beds. We know where the hidden stuff is, shoe boxes and closets, all that. That was never gone through. You can look at the photos from the scene and just tell it wasn't searched like we searched.
Why? Why didn't that to me would be something important based on the brief?
Yeah, it was one of the mistakes made, and I don't think it was on purpose.
Okay.
A lot of stuff was going on after that with with me being shot and in surgery and
Right.
and people getting pulled all different directions. They still had the warrants down at the other locations that they were serving, and they followed through with that. And when one of the investigators on the case called somebody in upper command and said, "Hey, now that public integrity has left the scene, can we go back in to serve this warrant now? That's why we were here." And they were told no. They said, "This is it. We're done. Be done with it." I think simply because they didn't know the extent that this was going to blow up into. Usually these are pretty cut and dry. You've got a signed search warrant by a judge. The police go in, an officer gets shot, returns fire. It's usually cut and dry.
Yeah.
We were shot at first. We returned fire, and usually that's justified in people's eyes. But this one got totally spun out and twisted into something it wasn't.
So sorry if I missed this. So the actual money that was in her apartment, that was never actually found then?
Not by police. On the jail phone calls, Glover,
that's right. Okay.
Glover talks about, "Hey, go get my money." She's holding $13,500 or whatever it is, $14,000, plus she's got somebody else's money there. So he was telling people to go to her house and get it. Another case where
Don't they say at the beginning of those calls, this can be recorded? Like, not the sharpest.
No, but we don't catch the sharp ones, so it's just kind of the way it is. There.
Valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he's been in and out of prison his whole adult life, yeah.
Did you? So the big conversation and even legislation changed after it, and before we even get to there, was this a no-knock warrant?
No. So originally this was signed as a no-knock warrant because of Jamarcus Glover, not because of location. No-knock warrants are signed based on the totality of the circumstances, but basically the individual that you're serving the warrant on. What kind of history do they have? Have they fought the police? Do they have security cameras, locks on the doors? Do they have security dogs? All these things come into play. And Jamarcus Glover had an extensive history of guns, drugs, running from the police. So it was for him. But that night, they knew he wasn't going to be at that location because they had a ping on his phone, tracker on his car, and they had guys out getting visuals on him. They knew he was heading toward Elliott Avenue, so they said, "This one no longer qualifies as a no-knock, so we're going to serve it as a regular warrant." Matter of fact, they said the only person they thought was inside, they said, was a heavy-set black female. Give it extra time. Knock on the door, give it more time than you normally do, because we want her to kind of work with us. And so that was the goal going out. It wasn't to go lock Brianna up. It wasn't any of that. We were going to go collect the money, the documents that tied Jamarcus Glover to her, and then use that as part of the organization so they could possibly do a RICO on it, which is where you'd have 5 or more subjects that you can pull in and make a case on.
So when you guys arrived on site, would you say, looking back, that you guys were not expecting it to go sideways?
Yeah, I would say that.
You're always ready, but you're not
You try to be ready. And the way I express this, so I've been involved in over 2,000 warrants in my career. So even though you try to constantly stay super vigilant and your guard up, there are some cases where the human nature kicks in, and I've done this so many times and nothing's ever happened, and you relax a little bit. So probably going in, we were a little more relaxed, thinking it was just a single female knock on the door. She's going to come to the door. We've done this 100 times. Get them to cooperate, go in, do what we do. The one thing that did make this different, when we pulled up, I had gone through that parking lot about 15 minutes before we went there, and there was no cars in front of the apartment. There were the normal cars parked, but when I went through this time, when we pulled up, there was an actual Toyota Sequoia parked perpendicular to the other cars, and it wasn't there previously, and we weren't told by the eye that this car was there. So the alert did go up then because I didn't know if that person was in Brianna's apartment or where they were. So that caused us to focus in a little bit. Then when we got up to the door, as soon as we started knocking, one of the upstairs, or the guy whose actual vehicle that was picking up a kid upstairs, and he came out and started arguing with a couple of the officers. So all that kind of, there was distractions, but it also kind of focuses you in because now you're dealing with outside circumstances that you weren't planning on.
So he was a neighbor, the guy that was in the Sequoia.
He was picking up his child. The neighbor was babysitting while he was at work.
So that, of course, also would make it very clear that there were police outside. It's hard to be quiet that way.
Right. Oh, there was a huge argument with him. When he came out, somebody's always assigned to like the extra areas. And when he popped out of that door, he was engaged by the officer down here saying, get back in the apartment. Because we don't know who's a threat. When you're going places, you've got to assume everybody's a threat just because you don't know them. So when he popped out, he was addressed. There was an argument that took place. Finally, that subsided. He went inside. And fortunately, it did happen because he's the only one that told the truth about us knocking and announcing. Kenneth Walker eventually said, yeah, we knocked. That's why he knew we were at the door and got his gun and got ready. But he said he didn't hear us announce, which is total crap.
And Kenneth Walker's the boyfriend. He was essentially more, I guess, would you say he was closer to the crime ring, or was it just as much they were?
No, he wasn't part of this ring.
Not at all.
No, he did his own stuff. He did sell drugs because when they downloaded his phone, he has pictures of drugs in there and contacts and text messages going back and forth where he was delivering them. He sold a lot of it to the Hooters girls in southern Indiana, which, do what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm sure he gave a discount.
Yeah, well, benefits.
Yeah, benefits. Yeah. So, all right, so you guys are upstairs, and again, the whole American public was told for a while that this was a no-knock warrant. You guys went storming in, and there was a shootout that ensued. You got there. You went upstairs after the altercation or whatever with that other guy, with the guy picking up his kid, and then what?
Okay, so we were on the bottom floor. He was upstairs. The altercation took place.
Got it.
We were already positioned downstairs on the bottom floor. We knocked on the door, regular, first couple of times. When there was no answer, started banging on the door. When I'm talking about banging, I'm talking about an open hand, super loud slap on the door. It's called the police knock. Everybody knows what it is.
Yeah.
It's ever encountered the police. It's not somebody delivering pizzas. And yelling, police, search warrant, police, search warrant. This went on for a good minute, and probably after the first two knocks, another 5 cadences of knocks and announces. And right before the last knock and announce, the guy who was breaching the door, Mike Nobles, he said, hold on, I think I hear somebody. So we stopped, listened, couldn't hear anything, announced again, police search warrant. If you're there, come to the door, nothing. I knocked one more time and announced. After that, I looked back at my lieutenant. He kind of gave the nod, and that's when we proceeded to breach the door because the group on Elliott had already made their entrance down there, and they were working the door down there and calling people out.
Message was about to go around, so you guys had to work.
Yeah, the ghetto net's fast, man. Yeah, it's better than the internet.
Had to work. I mean, I've seen the movie Training Day. They've got pigeons and all that stuff. So before you talk about going, well, you didn't really go in, but before you talk about the next step, so the amount of time that had passed at this point, and I know that I've seen in other interviews you talk about Kenneth Walker making a phone call to his mother and that timeline being questionable because his big thing was, I didn't know that it was police. We've pretty easily outlined it's obviously there was obviously police. He had to have known at this point. So what do you know about that phone call with his mom?
Here's what we know. So first of all, when you looked at ABC and CBS and all them when they interviewed him, and their big thing was even on The View. I remember looking at the Views thing, and they were like, oh, poor Kenneth Walker, this proves that he didn't think it was the police because as soon as the police were banging on the door, he called 911. I mean, that's what people do. Well, he didn't do that, and that's the big red flag. He actually brought Brianna out into the hallway with him. He got up, got dressed, got his gun. She got up. They went out in the hallway, and instead of calling 911, just waited and waited as we're yelling police. There's no way he didn't hear us in the small apartment. And once we opened the door, that's when the shots began. But he didn't call 911 until 6 minutes after that shooting happened, after this had already taken place. And by phone records, it shows he called his mom first, then he called 911, then he called Brianna's mom. However, there was another phone recovered that the FBI has that they won't give us any information what's on it. They won't tell any of the phone calls that were on it. It's being very guarded for whatever reason. And this is what we think. We think that's the phone that he used before the shooting, because there's a courtesy officer that lives in that apartment complex, went to school with Kenneth Walker, middle school, high school. knows Kenneth's mom. When he heard the shots, he turned his radio on and heard an officer down, put his uniform on, came outside. When he realized it was Kenneth's house, he stood on the perimeter. About that time, Kenneth's mom shows up. She sees him, recognizes him, comes up to him, and she says, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. Kenneth called me and said they're at the door." And I said, "Who's at the door, baby?" He said, "It's the police. I got to go," and hung up. So why would this guy who's friends with Kenneth, and this guy gave his statement early on. He didn't know.
It's too bad that guy didn't have a body cam running at that point, because if they would have heard his mom say that, I think this could have been such an easy.
Well, they had the statement of him doing it. Why was there no follow-up? There's so many things the ball was just dropped in so many areas here. Because generally, in any case, I don't care how you prepare, things go bad, right?
Of course,
Things go sideways. Just like in normal life, if you plan on something, something always comes up. But unfortunately, in this case, there were just so many different factors that were mistakes made along the way, whether it be before, after, during the investigation, that you just scratch your head and go, man, how did so many dominoes fall in this same thing and have this effect?
And it's been a couple of years. So and now we're about to be breaching, or whenever the shooting started. And I don't remember, did any of the police officers have a running body cam?
No.
Not a single one?
No.
Why is that?
Well, 2 of them, or 3 of them were assigned body cams. But in narcotics, the thing, when I first went to narcotics in 2017, I think it was, 2017, the major at that time had sent a request. Narcotics never had body cameras. The street had them. And the chief at the time was like, "Hey, let's get body cameras up there." And this major said, "It's not going to work because they deal with informants. And if I go knock on this door and go in and this person wants to give me information, he sees this big camera staring at him.
Not going to happen.
And he's not going to talk. Or if he does talk, defense attorneys will file for discovery, get it. They'll tell their client who read it on him, and he's dead." So narcotics, that's the main reason that was never a case up there. Some of the guys had it because they worked off-duty jobs.
Yeah.
And if you work off-duty in uniform, you're required to wear a camera. So that's why a few of them had it but didn't have it on that night.
Okay. I mean, I think it's when the arguments people always had with me when I'm like, start looking at the facts. Just look at all the blatant information out here that shows that you've been misinformed. And the big response, even to all the stuff that I would throw at them, was, well, then why weren't they wearing body cams? And I don't have an answer.
I wish I had one on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather not know you.
Right. It'd be night and day. You'd still, 21 years on the force, and
I'd still be there.
You retired soon after.
Yeah.
So before we get into the retirement, let's get back to the situation. So take us now through the door gets knocked down.
Okay, so the door gets open. It took 3 hits to open it. On the 3rd hit, I knew it was going to come open because after the 2nd, I could actually see through the door into the living room.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the door, I'm to the left, the breacher's to the right, and the door opens from right to left.
Yeah.
So when that door got hit open, I could see I'm still on the left side of the door. We're not in the door frame. There's all these stories that everybody was piled in this door frame and the fatal funnel. That's stupid.
Fatal
it didn't
funnel,
happen.
yeah.
And it is one. But that's not what happened. So we're at the left. When that door swung open, I was able to see everything on the right side, the living room, the couches, the curtains, the picture on the wall. I can still see it. And when my field of vision ran out from the wall going down the hall to the door frame, I had to step in front of the door to see what's down the hall so we could clear it. So we're yelling, "Police search warrant, police search warrant." As soon as I step right to look down this hallway, it's about 25, 30 feet, very narrow hallway, I see 2 overlapping figures. And I couldn't make them out. I knew one was a male, female probably. I knew it was humans. And as my gun comes around with my light, I see the tip of his gun. And as soon as I see it, he shoots. And I felt the hit in the leg. I knew I was hit. So I immediately returned fire. He dives out of the way. As I go behind the door, I get off 2 more rounds. Unfortunately, Brianna followed him, or tried to follow him into the bedroom where the coward jumped out of the way and left her hanging there. And she got struck by the bullets that were meant for him.
So you got shot in the leg, correct?
Correct. The femoral artery.
It did hit the femoral artery, which explain to anybody that doesn't know what that means. And it also goes on to when people go, just shoot him in the leg.
Yeah.
What can happen when you get shot in the leg?
Well, so when I first got shot, I reached down and felt, and I instantly knew it wasn't just a through and through typical leg wound because we've dealt with tons of those on the street, and I've also seen femoral.
Yeah.
When that happens, artery damage. And the amount of blood that was coming out, I instantly knew it was that. And so, I backed out because basically at that point I'm out of the game. I'm thinking tourniquet. I got to get a tourniquet on my leg.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a 5-hour surgery to repair that. Took about 6 or 8 inches of it and had to replace it with a vein. So the leg's still numb from it. And
no kidding.
Yeah. So it's not just a little graze wound like Oprah said, me and him had a confrontation and then we gunned her down. Well, it's not really a confrontation.
Oprah said that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, in my head, I was still thinking The View. I was thinking Whoopi, which...
No, Oprah.
No, Oprah.
And then she paid for 26 billboards in our city that said basically we should all go to prison. It was pretty nice of her, yeah.
Without any information. And I think it's so sad. I mean, Oprah is such a great story. And what she's done with her career, kudos. And the way that she has butchered messaging,
yeah.
it's a nightmare. And it boggles my mind what she does to the black community, essentially saying how oppressed they are when instead of showing them how to be a billionaire who is black and female. But that's a total different discussion for a different day. So you got shot. You had 5 hours of surgery. Going back to the scene, you get hit. How fast? Because there was no second range of fire at this point, was there?
Meaning from him coming at us?
So correct.
Correct.
So you guys saw the muzzle flash. You get hit. You guys are firing back and forth. Do you guys have any idea who actually hit her?
One of my bullets did, and I think the rest were Cosgrove's, maybe two of mine. They're not really sure because these bullets are made to fragment when they go in. But the best they could tell, I mean, we both struck her.
Yeah.
But the best they could tell, the majority were from Cosgrove.
And he managed to get out of the way.
Correct. Well, he wasn't. He had filed in behind me because when you go in, you kind of.
No, I'm sorry.
Kenneth.
Kenneth, yeah.
Yeah, he dove out of the way, hid the gun under a bed. So again, you think you're getting home invaded. Why would you go hide a gun? None of this makes any sense.
You're going to keep shooting.
Yeah. Or you're going to go protect your girlfriend. In some of the interviews, he said, I held her hand and brought her down. Well, you can see the holes in the walls where he was standing. His head would have been taken off.
The misinformation had already started because we didn't even know there was a hallway until weeks later. We heard it was...
She was in bed.
In bed.
Yeah, like we snuck in and assassinated her in her bed.
What was it like to hear the first news and social media warriors coming out saying, like, did you hear that they killed this woman in her bed?
Well, the very first thing that I heard, I was laying in the hospital bed and turned on the TV the next day, and her family got up there, and they were like, she didn't even know Jamarcus Glover. Well, she had dated this dude off and on for like 7 years, and they knew him. And so that was the first lie, is that they didn't even know each other,
right.
So we shouldn't have been there. And then they came in and said, we didn't even have the right house, we were at the wrong place. And then they said we killed her in her bed. All these lies that just kept coming out. And the frustrating part, you're wanting to pull your hair out because you're going, you know the truth. I've seen the warrant with her name on it. Mm-hmm. I've seen the warrant with her address on it. I know they have pictures of her and him going to the trap house. And the frustration is unbelievable because you think your department's going to have your back, and they just don't. They folded. They did whatever the mayor told them to do. He said, leave this alone. He got up instantly and was like, we need justice for Breonna Taylor. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Instantly took their side and just buried us. And there was nothing we could do. We had gag orders on us. Because if we talk during this phase, they will not represent us in court during the civil stuff. And the lawsuit's ours. And we saw what they paid. They paid $12 million to her. So
unreal.
Yeah.
Because we've made it. And I know I've had some police officers on the show, and people have started to refer to me as a bootlicker, but I don't think truth refers to it. If there's a bad cop, I will talk about it. I will call this out. But the fact that there's so much misinformation and not allowing the truth to come out to cause rioting, to cause danger, to cause threats to your life as a police officer, as a human, screw it as a police officer, as a human being,
right,
because of blatant out-and-out lies. And I think that it's a microcosm for what the journalistic profession has become, and it's screwed up. And the one thing I remember hearing, and I can't remember what story it was about, but it was a Reuters VP, the VP of Reuters, talking about news or ex-executive, I think it was, talking about the importance to get ahead. I think it was about the vaccine, talking about the importance of getting your information out first, because it is almost impossible to change the human brain once they have already made a snap judgment. So there's people. What percentage of people do you think right now still believe that Breonna Taylor was killed in her bed?
Oh, man. Unless they've read the book or see me on a podcast, probably 95% of the people that heard the story.
Yeah.
Because there's been plenty of cops. I travel around now and speak at different conferences, narcotics conferences and different things. And you'd be surprised at how many cops, even in my own agency, that 2 years later, after standing on the front lines for over a year, putting up with all the crap they put up with from these protesters, they came to me and said, I had no idea. I had zero clue any of that took place. I thought what the news said was somewhat accurate. And that's kind of disheartening because we don't have a way of getting that out, because when we try, we get even legit right-wing or conservative media hasn't wanted to touch this story once the truth came out.
Yeah.
They won't cover the book. They won't cover the truth. But when it was hot, when it was a big ordeal in 2020 and early 21, they were still focusing on it and even putting out some bad information. So the fact that even the right wing won't help you get the truth out, that's pretty discouraging.
Yeah. And what was the amount of time that the whole from the first a minute for knocking after you guys breached the door?
From the time the door came open to the time the last gunshot rang out was less than 12 seconds. That's why the book's entitled 12 Seconds in the Dark, because there was that 12 seconds of chaos, of confusion, of fear, of all these emotions taking place that you don't know if your buddies were shot. You're looking for something to save your own life. So all these different emotions took place in that 12 seconds.
Right before we do the ad break, I asked the question, how many people really know, whether or not she was in her bed even? How about even this? How many people do you think, percentage, and I know that we're just throwing numbers out, how many people still think that the police were 100% wrong and she was an innocent bystander? How many people still believe that initial?
Well, I think it's getting less and less just for the fact that they're seeing all the lies in these other cases getting kind of shown. And I think you had a lot of people. You've got people that are going to support you no matter what. You got people that are going to hate you no matter what. Then you got the majority that's in the middle. That's the majority of America, kind of like politics, right in the middle somewhere. And I think of that group, maybe 70% just still don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think they've demonized this. I just think they don't know the truth.
Yeah.
And they're going by because we were all taught from youth, hey, just watch the news if you want to find the facts out. Right. And so you watch the news and all you hear for 2 years are all these lies. And if nobody combats it and the city pays $12 million, you think they must be guilty.
They must be in the wrong.
I would think so.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them for it.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to even have that conversation, because I do think at the end game, let us stop trusting the media, and I think it's unfortunate and it's sad because we do need to be informed. I think Denzel has that whole quote that he says, I think he stole it from somebody, but it's that concept. If we don't watch the news, we're not informed, and if we watch the news, we're misinformed. Right. So it's a weird thing, but it's good to continue to have these conversations. Let's do a quick ad break. Thank one of our sponsors. First off, if you like any of the gear we wear, again, that's awakenotwokestore.com. And then, of course, one of our supporters, we've got Monate. If you haven't heard me talk about it yet, you haven't watched the show yet. We also had Tony Van Schoik on one of the shows. They've got some great products that I've been using now for a couple months. And I want to make sure you guys get a chance to check them out. They also are a network marketing company. So if you're looking for a side job and want to use really high-end products, I'm going to tell you right now, I've started using them. It's a game changer. And they're not cheap. I'm going to be totally honest. They're not. But they're also, it's interesting to be able to notice that your hair feels different when you're trying stuff. So they've got Rejuvenique is one of their products. It's an oil. You can use it on your skin as well as the hair conditioner. And then for guys or girls, this actually helps grow hair back. To check out exactly the science behind it. All their products are cruelty-free, vegan, etc. If you want to learn more, go to bluntforce.mymonate.com. That's MYMONAT.com. And if you have any questions and maybe you want to sell the stuff, get into it and find a way to make side money, $2.3 billion in sales in about 8 years, you can be a part of this company. So just email me at bluntforcediscussion@gmail.com. We'll be right back.
Family Guys, I haven't seen that.
It's a good Family Guy. You got to check out. It's so I did a Roe versus Wade show where we had differing opinions, and I had to do the awkward break. And one of my buddies, he goes, "That all I could think of, super serious." So if you guys want to try this shampoo,
yes.
It's hilarious. So check that clip out. All right, so back to, because you talked about the book. You were 21 years on the force. After all this, still hasn't calmed down. There's still a federal investigation. You decided to retire, and you also were writing the book, and I know you had some publishing struggles with that. So why did you decide to finally end your career in policing?
Well, I didn't want to. A couple of reasons. When I first went back to work, the day that they said you need to be back by this date, which I was looking forward to going back. I had a great job. I worked with HSI. I worked with a Hyder group, supervisor over that. We did a lot of interdiction stuff. And so I was excited to go back. Had a good crew, liked what I did. The first day I went back, my major called me in the office and he said, man, I hate to do this, but here you go. And he handed me a letter, and I looked at it, and it was an involuntary transfer letter. They were going to put me down in the property room in the basement. And I looked at him, and I said, what's this about? I said, I didn't violate any law. I didn't break any policy. Why am I getting this? And he said, well, the chief just thinks it'd be best interest of the department. Now, this is the same chief who came from Atlanta. She came after all this stuff happened. Her very first press conference on TV, she sat there and said, oh, Brianna was asleep in her bed, and this should have never taken place, and this is part of white supremacy or white something to that effect, and they would never do this to white people in a white end of town. And I'm sitting there going, my God,
This is a
lady.
police chief. They're
Yes,
supposed
this
to be
police chief.
leading.
While I'm still in the department.
Yeah.
While these investigations are still going on, saying this stuff. And so she has no clue what she's talking about. And so I'm sitting there going, you got to be kidding me. This is my new boss saying this stuff. And then she turns around and basically demotes me, puts me, try to hide me, keeps me from the overtime, keeps me from my guys, all that. So I could see the writing on the wall because the mayor had publicly come out many times and said he wishes he could fire us. He wants us done. He wants us out of the picture. And so I thought, if I'm going to be able to sell any books or get the truth out, which is the main point in all this, I'm going to have to move on because they're looking for any reason to get rid of me. Even though I didn't do anything wrong,
Yeah.
they're looking for a reason, and I didn't want to give them that reason. So I felt kind of cornered.
Yeah.
I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I chose what I thought was going to be best for my ability to get out and help the guys down the road.
Is she still there?
Yeah, she's still there.
So she followed. You said she followed the Rashad
Brooks.
Rashad Brooks shooting. Went there. Did she ever actually apologize for those statements to you?
Not to me, no.
Have you heard?
Apparently, she went to narcotics and said she got some stuff wrong, some misinformation.
Some stuff. This is a person that all they have to do is ask one person when they come someplace and like, hey, before I make a public statement, what really happened?
You can't tell me after 3 or 4 months during the hiring process she didn't ask somebody along the way anyway. This was a national headline story. It was bigger than Rashad Brooks.
Yeah.
That she bailed from and left to come here and step into the fire and not know what you're getting into. It either that's her incompetence or her willing ignorance. I don't know which one.
Yeah, is it ignorance or nefarious? It's a tough one. So let's stick with the book for a second. So 21 years on the force, you retire. You then start writing the book. So and is there technically, because there's a federal case, is there technically still a gag order, or you're one of the only ones out of the police officers that day that are speaking out? I'm
just the only one speaking out.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think there was a little more scrutiny on their actions that night than mine. I think what has helped me is the fact that I got shot.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that because I was the only one not fired out of the group. And so, it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But that's no different than when you see these pundits on TV now when an officer gets shot or shot at. Well, he didn't really get shot. It didn't kill him, so why did he kill the suspect? And I'm going, so they have to die before they're allowed to defend themselves? It doesn't make any sense, but that just
Weird
shows
time
you
for
the
a
mindset.
Purple Heart. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't get one of those either.
Well, I know, but it's like, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, you give them credit, but, they died. Yeah. So, that is a Purple Heart. No, it's Gold Star.
Gold Star for 9, Purple Star, or Purple Heart for getting injured.
Yeah, my bad. It's off. All right, so before we get completely off the subject of the shooting and talk more about policing, I want to talk about Rand. I'm a Rand Paul fan.
I am too.
I think there's some issues. I'm not a huge the remdesivir thing. The fact that he's kind of a fan, also invested the hell out of it right before the pandemic. Super weird. But I am a fan of him. But he has the no knock warrant legislation called the Breonna Taylor bill.
It's called the Justice for Breonna Taylor bill.
Why did he do that? Is it a political stunt?
Yeah, it was 2020. I mean,
he had to.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, nobody has to.
It's true.
You took the easy way out, in my opinion. I mean, he's a libertarian. He's against police doing any kind of warrants, basically. He doesn't want, he thinks police ought to stay out of people's lives, which I'm for small government. I don't like big government either.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a case where this product that these people are peddling has killed over 100,000 people this year, that's a pandemic also.
Yeah.
And so you're basically handcuffing the guys who are trying to save the people in the community.
What were they dealing, heroin or fentanyl? It wasn't fentanyl, was it?
Well, there was fentanyl pills, I believe.
Oh, really?
But there was meth and, all of it.
Wide variety of garbage.
Yeah, just anything they get their hands on.
Yes. And you get $12 million as your bonus. It's a hell of a sales bonus.
And that, that $12 million was given before any rulings came down from the Attorney General, from DOJ, any of that. It came on a Sunday night in the middle of the night. Nobody knew it was happening. Anything over $1 million is supposed to go through our city council's approval. Mayor didn't get it. It just settled, moved on. And the only reason we think he did it is because the attorney for Breonna Taylor brought up the gentrification act that he was doing in that area. Because unbeknownst to the police department, we were the pawns for the scheme that he had going on, the thing that he wanted done. He wanted that area cleared out. There was 2 houses left on it, happened to be the houses that he sicked the police on. One of his representatives was in our office every Monday checking on to see what the status of that case was, pushing it. And when it went sideways, he was like, I don't know anything about that.
There's so many things wrong with the whole situation and the way the police department handled it and the way, and a lot of people don't know this either. And since I've been covering different stuff like this, whenever somebody's killed by police, even if they are in the wrong, 90% or more of the time, the family gets a payout.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they're a criminal and they're threatening the life of a police officer. So it's not just Breonna Taylor. How common, I mean, I'm sure, especially with the violence happening in Louisville right now, how common is this payout?
It's very common. So I think about a year before this case, they had a case where a guy came at officers with some kind of big knife type thing. And it's on video. It's on body cam.
Yeah.
He comes and charges him. He's beating his woman. They show up. He comes out. He charges at him. They're backing off, time to drop it. They shoot him. He dies. And the city pays like $1.2 million to the family.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he's beating this woman, comes at the police with the knife. They defend themselves, and the family gets a big payday. It makes no sense. It between that and letting these criminals in this revolving door of jail, put them in, next day they're out, put them in, next day they're out. Why wouldn't you stay in the game?
Yeah, you were watching that clip from New York, the guy that a 16-year-old that wrestled a police officer that, might I add, I think just had a crime that he committed 3 days
with
before.
A gun.
Yeah, with a gun.
Yeah.
And they let him out within 24 hours. You've got the fentanyl pills in California, 150,000 of them, that mysteriously in the middle of the night, they let these guys out, and I know this is going to come as a surprise, but I bet you know this. They didn't show up for their hearing.
Now they're back in Mexico, getting a new ID.
It's
getting a new social when they cross the border.
People are so worried about gun control, and they're completely ignoring the fact that this is very simple. Let's actually punish criminals, and we'll maybe start getting semblance and control of our society again.
It's not a hard concept.
I don't think it is.
No.
But we're deemed racist and hateful, bootlickers, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Until they need you.
Till they need you.
Then they'll call you.
So the last thing before we go into our shot seat, don't get the shot seat. So when we had the police officer on last time and they were talking about, and there are people that are so anti-police that think that all they are is white nationalists, white supremacists, etc. And I said, fine, what would you think of this? What if we made it, if you have made any defamatory, and this is, I know, anti-libertarian, but if we made any defamatory statements to a next level of police are completely worthless, all of them, if it was a blanket statement, permanently remove the ability for them to call police. Think that would change sentiment?
I think it would pretty quick because, I mean, then it would be survival of the fittest and there's only a handful of people that can kind of control everything. And the rest of everybody else is kind of prey.
Yeah.
You know, the lion's not sheep type deal.
Nothing worse than a liberal Karen, like an ultra-left Karen.
Like a Michael Malice?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
anarchist?
Yeah, exactly.
Whose little fellow couldn't defend himself?
Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's do a little shot seat. We'll be right back.
Or as I said, it's because Michael Malice hates me.
What's going on, everybody? It is time for the Don't Get the Shot seat. This time we're doing a little whiskey. So here's what we got. I'm going to be pouring this. We're a little low on the bond breaker. Oh, I didn't get you. Oh, you got a little cup. Perfect. You thirsty?
He loves his whiskey.
We got Mike with us. He's going to have a little bit. So the way this works is if it makes you want to sweat and answer the question, go ahead and take a shot. And if you aren't sweating and just want to answer the question and just want to take a shot, then take a shot. So here you go. There you go. All right. So the Don't Get the Shot seat is brought to you by Dr. Artis, the Artis Labs, or the drartisshow.com. And if you want to actually go on there, I'll talk about it real quick at the end. Make sure you just use BFD for any of the stuff that is going to make you healthy, make you feel better. Also detox from the old jibbity jab, hence why this is the Don't Get the Shot seat. Okay, quick questions. I'm going to fire them off. They're going to be a little bit more fun in some ways and maybe not in others. What do you say to people that ask, why can't police just shoot him in the leg or the arm?
Well, it's very hard to, number one, hit a moving target.
Right.
But number two, what we talked about earlier, there's still deadly consequences to that.
100%.
There's no guarantee.
And I screwed up. We're supposed to take a shot beforehand. So cheers. A little sippy sip. It's actually pretty good. It's not bad. I know you're a tequila vodka guy.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have to gulp it. I'm just kidding. You know. It's actually pretty good, isn't it? Not that
It's kind of sweet. It's not bad.
Yeah. Lemon peel is one of the flavors. It's actually Randy Rogers whiskey. We're trying to get them to sponsor. They gave the bottle. We're still working on it.
Come on, Randy.
I know. Randy, step up. Officer Mattingly. Sergeant Mattingly says step up.
I don't even drink whiskey, but come on. This was good.
This is good stuff. All right, so let's see. Yeah, it showed me that. Speaking of that, total subject change, but involving a moving target. Did you hear about the Good Samaritan in Indiana?
Yeah, amazing.
40 yards, moving target with a pistol, 22 years old.
Yeah.
All happened in 15 seconds.
Impressive.
Did God just flow
100%.
I don't understand.
He guided those bullets right in there.
And the fact that the guy was throwing the phone in the toilet, and that's my conspiracy brain is like, is that guy programmed? Is this part of this whole thing? And this was just thwarted instantly by God. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what we got. What was the biggest procedural mistake made with Breonna Taylor?
Spending too much time knocking on that door.
Do you wish you could have testified in Brett's trial?
Yes, I wanted to. I even got emails from my lawyer saying, please. And they were like, no, he's got this. He knows what he did. He knows why he did it. Let him tell it. And you stay out of it because it could affect the federal case. If you say something just a little bit different than the statement you gave them, they'll use that against you. And they were confident that once some of that truth came out, and the jury heard the truth that they hadn't heard in 2 years, that they would go, that makes sense. And that's exactly what they did. Because I thought Jefferson County is a very liberal city. We're super democratic and liberal. We're like a little San Francisco. We really are. And when that happened and they acquitted him, I thought, oh my gosh, there's hope. You know, maybe things are turning a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple more questions. 2 words. What does this make you think of? What's your first response when I say it? Benjamin Crump.
Piece of crap. It's not 2 words, but bumbling fool.
No, the 2 words were Benjamin Crump.
Okay.
You don't have to give me 2
he's
words.
A piece of crap.
That's the ultimate race ambulance chaser on the planet.
Yes.
Like anytime you hear that name, I don't get how people haven't gone, oh, like why would I want to be associated? It's just because he's so good at finding a way to screw over innocent people.
Yeah, well, all he does is lie. I mean, he can't hardly put 2 sentences together, and he comes in and mumbles and jumbles and tells all these lies and gets everybody stirred up, and then the city burns and he leaves, takes his money and disappears, goes to the next one.
Final shot seat question.
All right.
What is and you've got to do a lot of interviews. What is the most fun interview you've got to do?
This one.
You answered it the way that I wanted you, and you've been on Megyn Kelly's show, which I know is fun. So this one, that is the
That's right.
shot seat.
When you can do something in person, it's just so much better.
100%.
Andy Stump's Cleared Hot. It was a good show. I enjoyed it. But this one's better.
We'll be right back.
Because we got to have dinner.
Truth.
Yes.
What was it? I mean, you were just a cop, like back, and next thing you know, you're making because of one fateful night, to be thrust into the spotlight, kind of like that. What was that like to have to do interviews with like the Megyn Kellys of the world and big time networks?
Well, the interviews and stuff, no big deal, because I was so ready to get the truth out. Now, as far as being in the limelight, I never wanted that. Back in 2012, they tried to get me to be an instructor. And I was like, I have no desire to talk in front of people.
Yeah.
I don't want to get up and be that guy.
Yeah.
We used to have a camera crew that would follow us around and do the Louisville Cops version of it.
Yeah.
And every time they would go, you want to do it? Nope. I didn't want to be in front of the camera, want to be behind it. I had zero desire to do that. So when this happened, number one, they put my fat face picture out there everywhere. And I just told my wife, like, I swear to God, like 2 weeks prior, I was going through something and saw that picture and went, oh man, I hope I never get involved in anything because I don't want that all over. And
The baby face one?
Well, yeah, I look like a school board politician, like, hey, vote for me, and it's just horrible. And I couldn't stand it even from the day it came out, we had to take them. Because when you take those pictures, they herd you in like cattle. Sit down, turn right, click, next, and you don't get to look. It's not like your wife where you look at, nope, take another one, nope, take another one. It's just once you get, you're done.
Yeah.
And so, that was the worst part.
You look really young. And it's funny, when I saw that you had, grown kids and a family and all that stuff, I was like, huh. Because you always look really young. Now seeing you in person, not that you look old, but you got the beard, you look a little tougher, but you have a baby face. Were you, when you were in your earlier part of your career, did you have trouble having people take you seriously because you always look younger?
Oh, yeah, man, because I didn't get on until I was 27.
Okay.
And so, but I still looked young. I looked 21 when I was 27 or 20. I just always looked younger. And I had the police haircut from the academy where they made you buzz it or keep it really short, high and tight. And I remember it was my first phase on the street. And I was in the area I grew up in, which is a very poor end of town and rough, and made a run up to one of the convenience stores. And I go in, and this guy, so Portlandite, looks at me, and roughneck looks at me and goes, you're a rookie, aren't you? I looked at him and went, how do you know? And he went, I can tell by your haircut. I grew my hair right out. I never cut it short again. Just because that was one of the stigmas, and I was like, I don't want that.
Not going to be a part of that. I want to go back to the book deal. I forgot to mention this part of the Don't Get the Shot seat. Artist Labs, if you are, like, do you admit to people that you're pure blood?
Yes.
Can I say? Yeah.
I'm proud of it.
Pure bloods like us. Yeah. So if you did get forced to take the shot or, get paid to do it as part of your job, no offense to the person sitting in the room with us, caved. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Child support.
Child support. If you want to flush it from your system, some fun facts. Go to an infusion center. If you are symptomatic and you're realizing you're still having stuff, go to an infusion center. Glutathione and vitamin C, the highest amount of infusions that are allowed. Do this for a couple months. If you're asymptomatic and you're like, I don't want to randomly have something happen to me, NAC 500 milligrams of selenium, 200 milligrams of that, apple pectin powder, vitamin C, etc. A lot of these supplements are part of the Artist Lab stuff, and we sell them. Dr. Artist does, and you could use BFD for 10% off. A lot of the stuff, melatonin, vitamin C, quercetin to protect you, just in case there is a reoccurrence of the vid. So please support us with that and support your own immune system and check that out. So, sorry, I had to get back over that. That was how the sponsor of the Don't Get the Shot seat. And thank you for your support, Dr. Artist. Okay, so with that said, the book deal. Let's go back to that. So you, and I know that you have the book that came out. I did not realize that was a much harder process than you would think, because it's a book that people probably want to read and understand what's going on. So the publisher got dropped. What happened with the book?
Yeah, so I originally signed on with Post-Hill Press. It's a small publishing house out of Nashville. And what these smaller publishing houses do is they go through like Simon & Schuster and all these big houses, so they can actually print the books, send them out to Amazon, fulfill the orders, do all that stuff, because they just don't have the capabilities. And Simon & Schuster, once it leaked that I was, had this book deal with them to get the truth out, they felt the pressure and they said, no, we're not doing it. And so Post-Hill had no way of putting it out. And they're good people. I have nothing against Post-Hill, great people. Anthony Zaccardi's the president down there, and he does a great job. But what we did was we started putting feelers out. We were like, man, we could see where this is going. I could feel that this wasn't going to happen. And Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire picked up Jeremy Borings, who I actually talked to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
that's actually how I did the Jeremy's razors this morning.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had to support it, even though it was holy god expensive. But I bought it when that funny video came out.
Yes, where he blew the stuff up.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of stuff going on down there.
And they're about to start a competition at Disney, I believe.
Yeah, they just did the what's it called, Daily Wire X or whatever those things are.
Yeah, their subscription extra thing.
And so, and they brought on Peterson and the other guy, and so it's huge. I mean, they're just going.
Yeah.
So they picked it up.
Sorry about that.
And it's all right. And they were able to get it out. And one of the things I worried about was like, well, what if I had a couple people to choose from, and I think that's why the other guy won't have me on his show or talk to me. But I chose them because they just had more reach. They had more ability to get it out in case a bigger, like Amazon or none of them would take it on, which fortunately they did. I think once they stood up to them and said, no, we're doing it anyway, kind of like they did with their lawsuit against the jab and all that.
Yeah.
I think Amazon was like, okay, never mind. And they just let it go.
Yeah.
Because they had already canceled a couple books that were similar in genre as far as, right leaning and that type thing.
It's also very hard to it was for a while, it was very hard to find the anti-Dr. Fauci book for a while, and it's telling, to say the least. There was a laptop from hell for Hunter Biden. So with that, but when did it actually come out?
It came out March 15th of this year, 22.
And how's it done to this point?
It's done well. Okay. Again, there's been a lot of even struggle getting the word out simply because, like we talked about earlier, algorithm shuts you down on certain things. People like Fox won't touch it.
Yep.
Other big name people out there, podcasters and stuff, they just won't touch it. I think they're still scared a little bit of either their people that support them, behind the scenes, that they'll go, no, we can't do that, or, we'll drop your advertising if you do it. So I think that's a lot of it, but it's sad that we can't get the truth out in a mass way.
Yeah. And you're trying to give whether somebody thinks it's the truth or not, the ability to explain your side of the story is so drastically important, because you talk about, and I forgot to mention, Kenneth, going back to the scene, Kenneth Walker, when he was on body cam, once he got down to the car, was claiming that Breonna Taylor was the shooter.
Yeah. When he finally came out 16 minutes later.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know y'all were out here. Well, there's lights, sirens, 200 cops, all this stuff. Well, who shot? Well, she shot. She was scared.
Well, she's dead, so she can't speak for herself.
Right.
That's really convenient.
Yeah. So it shows his character. I mean, he's a piece of crap.
He threw her behind a wall, and where is he today?
Oh, out joyriding,
is
raking money in. People like Tyler Perry gave him $100,000 for his. Because what happened was he sued me. He turned around and sued us, those involved, me being named one of them. He shoots me, then sues me. And so when I countersued him, I had no desire to sue him. Number one, I know he's going to blow through all his money, and it's a waste of time and money. But it was the principle at that point. I'm like, no, man, I've been getting punched in the face over and over for months. I'm fighting back. So I countersued him. Well, man, the national media made that how dare this officer who executed Breonna Taylor and hurt Kenneth Walker's feelings so bad with the love of his life, and now he's suing him. And I'm going, well, what would you do? Somebody shoots you and then sues you. What are you going to do? Just go, okay, well, here's some more money.
It's
take it and go.
Imagine a world where you can be a criminal, shoot at the police, get awarded money, and be still free and out on the street and be played as the victim.
Yeah. And he's traveling around with Ben Crump and Breonna's mom at these different events and these different tragedies that take place with police, and
in the name of woke justice.
Yeah.
It's this is one of those ones where I just I don't understand. None of it makes sense. And any rational thinking human, no offense if you think differently, it's very rare where I go, we are not on the same intellectual plane, because I want to be able to have a conversation with everybody. But if you can hear just the basics and look at there's enough footage of him lying, of him saying, and him changing the story, and an eyewitness account. There's enough footage to go, if you feel differently about this, we are not equals.
Right. Even if you agree with him to the point where you say, okay, well, the charges should have been dropped because how do we know he did hear us say police? Fine, I'll give you that. But all the other outlying factors of saying it was the wrong house, we were there to rob her, which was a big thing.
Right.
Saying that she was asleep in her bed, when all that's been debunked by photos, by documents, there's evidence for all of this. It's not just me saying it. It's not me writing it in a book. There is actual evidence that shows, that backs these facts, that supports it, and people just don't want to hear it. I'm still getting stuff on social media going, oh, how could you kill that poor girl in her bed? Oh, you weren't even at the right place. And I'm going, oh my God, do you not watch? I mean, at this point, do you not watch anything? Do you just regurgitate the stupid stuff?
The first thing. Yeah. And that leads to my next question, because I think this is also a big thing, this whole misinformation of who people are. So why is it so important that the media makes everybody out to be somebody that they're not? Michael Brown, as I said to you earlier, most people still picture him as an 8th grader, ignoring that he was 300 pounds and had just accosted an Asian convenience store worker. Jacob Blake is a victim, ignoring his background and the fact that his own girlfriend was kicking him out of the house for abuse and potential and alleged rape. George Floyd, great father, great human being, and sad when people die, not gonna lie. But why is it that we have to ignore all of the bad that they do? And then, of course, Breonna Taylor, the nurse, the EMT, whatever it was.
Right.
What was the truth about who she was then and who she was several years before?
So in 2016, she did go through EMS class. She got hired on by Louisville Metro EMS. She was on probation. She did 5 months of that and ended up getting fired. I've heard multiple speculations. I'm not going to repeat them.
Something about the trunk. Is that?
That's true.
That is
so
true.
She did rent a car in her name, and they found a dead body in the trunk that had been killed, and it was somehow associated with Glover and all those guys.
That's her ex-boyfriend.
Right, the guy that was part of this case.
Right.
They came back and said, "Oh, the car was stolen." That's typical. It always happens in rental cars. Oh, it was stolen, not my car, not my pants. Same type thing.
Yeah.
And so she was involved in that. She was involved in, there's so many allegations from higher up EMS people that have called me and said, involved in nefarious activities while on the job at EMS. Her records show many no-call, no-shows to work. And then, just the fact of the group of people she was hanging out with that we know for a fact were selling drugs. So she was, unfortunately, in this game. I think she had a horrible childhood. She really did. Her dad's in prison. Her mom did not help raise her. The one that's on TV crying all the time. Her grandma raised her. And
where's her grandma?
I'm not sure. I don't know if she's dead or
Okay.
I really don't know.
Okay.
But they moved here from Michigan. They moved to Louisville from Michigan, probably I think when she was in 7th grade or something like that.
Yeah.
So she grew up here. She had a rough life, and those girls are generally targeted by guys like Glover and Walker, who see them as weak-minded, who's somebody that really wants the attention and will do anything for it, anything for love, because they haven't had that their entire life. So I don't blame her. She was just a pawn in this game also, just like we were a pawn on the other side.
Yeah.
I blame the guys who were actually selling the drugs and the guy that shot me and all that. I think she was unfortunately a pawn that now they've used leverage against us using her. So if you're going to do that, then you've obviously got to show the other side of her also, which nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do a smear game, but when they pull all of our records and say, oh, from 15 years ago this happened, which is nothing, a complaint that turned into nothing, that was unfounded. Oh, but you were complained on about that.
Right.
What was unfounded? They use that against Brett a lot.
Yeah.
Hankus and the guy in the case. But then you say, well, yeah, but what about this? Well, that doesn't count. You can't talk about her past.
Right.
Only yours. And so I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And, you know, she was fired and put on the no rehire list. And
it's far from innocent. That's the ultimate thing. And again, the media. Why do you? So yeah, the question. Why do you think the media finds it so important to sensationalize in that way?
Money, clicks, dollar amounts. If you get people in an uproar, and you can get them battling back and forth, and they're going to watch your stuff and go, oh man. We're a society of Real Housewives and Kardashians, so everything that's sensational is what gets people's brains firing. Because if it's just boring news, what 20-year-old watches CNN or Fox News?
Right.
None of them.
No.
But if you turn a news channel on and it's talking about this crazy white racist cop that broke into this house and assassinated this girl, and then there's an uproar, even the young people watch that stuff.
Yeah, and it creates more of an uproar because if you see somebody that looks like a gangbanger or a thug or whatever it is, this guy was killed, automatically the human brain is intelligent enough to go, like, maybe he deserved it. But if you find a way to make it where this person didn't deserve it, you've got clicks.
Right.
You've got money. It's, to me, the biggest issue with our society right now. And that, there's so many things that can be fixed. You talk about the idea of punishing criminals and then misinforming the public. You take those two away.
And being able to have these honest conversations without people saying, oh, you're a racist. Well, I'm not racist. I'm just stating the facts.
Yeah.
If that leads this person down this path, that's not my problem.
How dare you say she was black?
Yeah.
Well, she was black.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, weird.
And not to say white people do commit crime. We know they do. And actually that's a good curveball. Why is it that it's automatically deemed racist when we say black on black crime? When we talk about stuff like that, and then you've got the issues with, well, why don't you talk about white crime? Why don't you talk about that side of the coin? Why do we miss that?
Unfortunately, the black community commits violent crimes 7 times the amount of any other community. Mm-hmm. And that's not
per capita.
And that's not saying blacks are bad.
Yeah.
That's just saying we've got an issue with the culture that we got to work on. When you look at rap music and all that stuff, what do they promote? Drugs and violence, period.
Yeah.
And horrible stuff toward women. So when that is incorporated into your children, their entire youth growing up, what are they going to do? They're going to emulate that.
Yeah.
We had Teddy Bridgewater. He was a quarterback for Louisville. He's in the NFL now.
Yeah.
And he just put out a statement like 3 weeks ago saying, why are all you NFL guys acting like a bunch of hard-ass thugs? You're not. He said 1.5% of you might be, but the other 98.5 are. Then you get this money, and all of a sudden you're acting big and bad and talking about guns and all this drugs and all that, and you're influencing kids. And he said, we've got a responsibility to do the right thing. And he hit the nail on the head. If I said that, I'm a racist. But he says it, and he's absolutely right there.
And that's why it's important to have multiple people talking. We're going to be right back. This is the end of the WeBeam. Real quick, while people, just in case you're watching on just WeBeam, sometimes they play more, so you'll get to catch it. Where can people buy your book, find out more information about what you do?
Anywhere online, Amazon, the main one, or you can go to Barnes & Noble Books A Million. It's in stores there.
Excellent. And we'll be, again, right back for some bonus stuff. If you watch our content and you're not already following the YouTube, follow it now. It is BluntForceDiscussion. Super easy to find. Same with Instagram. And please support anything we're doing, WeBeam. I know you got a lot of viewers on there. It's like 20-something, 30,000. Support. Patreon.com/BluntForceDiscussion. Or if you like the gear, go to AwakeNotWokeStore.com. Do Awake for 15% off. We'll be right back. Yeah, I think it's interesting when we talk about, and you brought up, obviously the statistics are in favor to have the discussion about black on black crime, but I also think, people are like, well, white people still commit crime. And I go, I absolutely agree, but nobody is claiming foul when a white person is killed by a police officer. Right. I think that's the discussion that has to be had. The reason we don't bring it up is because we're not bringing up the violence that ends up happening to an unarmed white person, which is statistically the same, not per capita, but the same as... But it's in line with violent crime statistics. Right. So I think people...
It's actually higher.
Yeah.
Statistically.
It is statistically higher. What's interesting, I remember we had a guest on Truth Will Set You Free one night, and we had multiple leftist guests back when they were still willing to have a conversation. I would still like to have more. We were talking about we asked the question, how many unarmed black people do you think are killed every year by police?
What'd they say?
Over 1,000.
Oh my gosh.
It's under 20. And then I even said, let's say some of the police reports are bad and they're covering stuff up. Even if you 10x it at 200, which I think is ridiculous, but even if you 10x it, 150, 200, that's still not even, Louisville, that's the amount of homicides in Louisville. What did you guys say last year?
182, 182. I think.
So that's still less than that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the real problem. And then that problem, the violent crime, is what leads to officers having itchy trigger fingers because they're scared, because they're human beings, because they don't know what's about to happen. And we talked about the overwork of the police department. So what do you think about the current state of policing?
Oh, man, it's a tough one. I think there's a lot of villainization that goes on. I think politicians totally use the police to whatever works for him that day. You saw Joe Biden last week come out and say, if you're against, these gun laws and you're against police. I'm like, come on, fool. You can't sit there and talk about anything about the police because you're constantly coming at us. There's nothing you do that's positive about the police.
He never said defund the police. That was the only thing. People still think that's part of his. Honestly, out of the 9,000 things he's done, garbage. He never once said he wanted to defund the police.
Okay, but he put people all around him that did.
1,000,000%. Every squirrel
if
has
that
a
protects you and you put the people around,
not at all. But
let them take the bullets, and I'll come out the king.
To qualify truth with some people that sometimes throw that out and they say he did a lot of things. He never respected the police, but he never once said defund the police.
He did say we were wrong.
1
during
million
the presidential debates.
1,000,000%. So there's still massive failures, but continue.
So politicians, I think that's huge because people do listen to politicians, whether we want them to or not. Nobody should. I mean, most of them lie. There's a few good ones, but probably 90% of them are corrupt. And so you want to talk about fixing something, that's probably where we should start. And that would help the country in general. But then I think the media is huge because at least in Louisville, I know we've got one reporter that's not pro-police, but not anti-police. She calls out cops when they do wrong, but if they do right, she calls it out too. Everybody else, man, it's just a pile-on job, and it's unreal. And, they'll make stuff up, and then the other news channel will hear it, and they'll repeat it, and then, it's like the telephone game, and it gets worse and worse. And then you've got society in general. I think we've got teachers, especially colleges, talking about how bad and how much victims black people are. And how the police, because they say in the 1800s or whatever, they were slave catchers, Well, guess what? There's not slavery in America anymore. We're not slave catchers.
Right.
We're just simply trying to say, okay, these are the laws on the books that you politicians passed. All we're doing is enforcing them.
Yeah.
And then when you enforce it, then they come at you. And with the rhetoric and with the DOJ and your prosecutors and DAs coming at the police trying to lock them up when the majority of them aren't doing wrong, again, if somebody does something wrong, that's on them. Police are human. You're going to have bad ones.
Yeah.
You're going to have guys make mistakes. You're going to have guys, like you said, get scared. Those guys shouldn't be the police. That's fine. Punish them accordingly and move on. But the majority are great guys. The majority are and women that are willing. You call me a racist for going in the black neighborhood willing to die for another black person that I don't even know. How does that make me racist? That makes no sense.
No.
So I think that it's mostly the rhetoric that people are listening to and the fact that, like I said, we can't have these conversations because, my son-in-law's black and I sat down with him one day after this and I was like, man, this is what I feel. Tell me what you feel. And we had a good conversation and nobody's feelings were hurt. I got to hear some of his views. He heard mine. We respected each other and it went fine.
Wait, so you just said your son-in-law is black?
Correct.
And you guys get along?
Oh, yeah.
So what's his political, so this is your daughter's husband?
Yes.
Correct? What's his political leanings?
I really don't know. I think it's more liberal.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure. I haven't really talked politics with him.
That's got to be insane for who you are. And do they live in Louisville as well?
Well, close, yeah.
Close enough. Obviously, the stigma behind you is not great. Not
Right.
to anything that you did. But that's got to be, I would love to know the conversations. So did they meet? They had to have met beforehand.
Oh, they've been dating since 7th grade,
Yeah.
and they're 27 and 26 now.
Wow.
So yeah, I've
That's
been
crazy.
racist a long time.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of your interviews. That's one thing I didn't know, and I think it sounds shitty, like to be like,
I got a black friend.
He's got a black friend. What is it, microaggression? But I think it's important to note that your son-in-law.
If you got to know the dynamics of people's lives before you attack them, and that's a dynamic in my life.
Yeah.
I've got 2 grandkids by him, so the fact that people come and say, "Well, you're racist, you want to kill black people," I'm going, "Oh my God, you just have no clue."
So ignorant.
Yeah.
And I don't think any police officer wants to kill anyone.
No, man, I'm telling you what. Since 2015, since the Michael Brown crap, every time there's a police shooting, we hold your breath and go, "Were they black or white?" Because you don't want it to be black. You really don't.
You don't.
You're
with
like,
you. I feel
"Please be
you.
white. Please be white. Please
Yeah.
be white." And it should just be, was it a good shoot or bad shoot? What was the circumstances? Period. But that's not the case, and that's sad, and it reflects society.
Well, the thing is, if you don't hear, then you know what it was. It's
Yeah.
white in that case. Like there was and it's again, that sounds racist for me to say, but there was a shooting in Dallas. I'm sure you were just at Dallas Love. I just got you
yeah.
from Dallas Love. You heard about the shooting
in
there
the airport.
4 days ago, which destroyed people's travel for the whole week because some angry woman decided to shoot into the air and start shit. Fun fact, there were hours that went by before they described the subject. I don't mind that. I'm completely fine without them saying black woman.
Right.
But let's just put the shoe on the other foot. If it was a white guy that shot at Dallas Love Airport, the first headline.
White supremacist Trump supporter. That's what you would have heard.
That's the first thing you would have heard. Yeah. And the fact that it took hours, and somebody posted about it, and somebody was there, and I had friends who were there, and I'm like, everybody's fine. I go, super weird that, because again, my mind goes, let's see if it's a white guy. And there was nothing there. It just said woman. Didn't even say, you know what? I go, I guarantee you this was a black woman. And that's why it took hours. And that shows the manipulation in the media and why we are where we are.
So I posted on one of my social medias, I can't even remember which one. I've got a picture of all the mass shooters in America. And I don't know what constitutes a mass shooter, maybe 3 people
Things
shot
have changed.
or more.
That definition has changed.
Yeah, it's so fluid.
3 or more shots.
But it's a massive amount of people from this past year that have done that.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are black.
Yep.
And then you hear the whole narrative, and this is what I get so sick of hearing. When a white guy shoots somebody and the police capture him, if he'd been black, they just shot him dead. Oh, yeah. And I'm going, look at all these mass shooters that were in custody that aren't dead. Your theory, or you're just making stuff up, but people believe it.
I don't know if they're making it up. I
emotional.
don't think they understand, and I talk about that all the time because so the mass shooting, there's a lot of black people on that list because it is 3 or more, and there's a lot of gang shootings, they spray and whatever. But if you look at the bulk of the school shootings, or what we would deem to us, what makes sense as a mass shooting technically is a lot of times done by white males,
people, like serial killers.
Yeah, serial killer, like same type thing. But why are they always arrested without being shot up? And
They do this.
They do that.
Quit.
And there's always multiple police on the scene. This isn't a one unit situation where there's a lot of stress behind it. And ultimately, when there is a mass shooting, they want to get to the bottom of it. So they will do everything they possibly can to not have to kill the shooter, because they want to know, are they working with anybody? Was there anything behind this? Is this something?
You want that, but that's the bottom of the list. If you're a guy on scene, you just want to eliminate the threat if it's still active.
If it's still active.
If not, you take him into custody the best you can legally, because you don't want to be hung out to dry.
Right.
Because if that guy comes up with his hands up and you shoot him, you're going to prison.
Oh, 100%.
So you're just trying to act within the law to get this guy under control. Most guys on scene aren't thinking about, why is he doing it? We got to get him out alive. Now, your commanders might be, or those guys, but the guys on the scene. But
that's why there's so many police officers there. Is my point. Is there's a different presence where you are much more, take away Uvalde, but you're much more in control of a situation, because typically they're not barricaded in a room. Typically it's barricaded in a corner, or they're putting their hands up, or they're killing themselves. So it's a very different conversation. Right. I think people automatically are like, oh, he's white, they let him go, and he killed 20 people. That guy stole a Kit Kat. Well, that guy that stole a Kit Kat is still a threat. He still has a gun in his hand shooting at police. Right.
Or the fact that people say, well, you were judge, jury, and executioner for this guy shoplifting. Well, the initial call was a shoplifting call, but then it turned into something totally different. That's not why the guy got shot.
Yeah.
They weren't playing judge, jury, and executioner. I get so sick of that line.
So one of the big things, before we go into really what you're doing and what you're doing in Oklahoma this week, even, and how you're helping officers, I asked you this question in the car ride over here, and it's about more in the current state of policing. You said 4 kids, right?
Yes.
What would happen if one, and they're getting older, obviously, but say you got an 18-year-old, and I think one of them is around
22.
22 is the youngest minus the 7-year-old. If they wanted to join the police force in this day and age, what would you say?
Man, like I said, I'm not going to promote it. I'm not going to say, hey, you should do this. If one of them came to me and said, this is what I feel like I'm called to do, I want to help people, I would support them. I'd be scared to death, honestly. But I would support them, because we do need good cops being out there. Mm-hmm. And one of the main reasons of me writing the book, other than getting the information out, is to kind of look at America and go, hey, wake up. Because you're chasing away all the good experienced cops that have, like I said, the experience, have the knowledge, have been there and done that, and now they're gone. And you've got a bunch of younger guys running the show that don't have that experience, and there's going to be more situations that could have been avoided. But due to lack of experience, there's going to be mistakes made, and you've had to lower your hiring standards so low that you're taking anybody's breathing. Yeah. And so in 10, 20 years, you're going to have nothing but what New Orleans and Detroit were in the 80s, with a bunch of rogue cops who you don't want being the police. Right. And so you keep going down this path, and that's what we're going to have.
It's either weak people that think that it's a social worker job, or it's people that are too gung-ho and they just want to start SHIT and move in, and it's dangerous. So I agree with you, and there is bad cops, plain and simple, and I understand that. And it's funny, people will see what I do now, and they're probably like, oh, everything that cops do, he thinks okay. I remember when I moved to Dallas, one of the first things that happened to me, and I was still very similar mindset in terms of police. Maybe it was about 2011, it was probably 2012, 2013. I remember there was two black guys left a nightclub, and there was cops that were stationed out front. And the black guys, they were just walking by, dressed nice, and the cop said something, and I don't know if they were kicked out, which they might have been, but they were nonviolent at all. They were just moving their way. One word was exchanged from the cop, and the guy turned around. I remember clearly, he goes, "What'd you say?" And all he said was, "What'd you say?" And the cop came up, grabbed him by his shoulder, flipped him over the top of the head. No reason. I gave the contact information to his buddy, and I reported that police officer. Right. So for somebody that everybody thinks that I think police can do no wrong, that cop was in the wrong. There was no I was there for enough of the backstory.
Yeah, because an incident like that can set 30 good positive things back. And what I tell people is, you've got 850,000 cops, 850,000, depends on where you're getting the information from.
Going down drastically every week.
Yeah. But that's in America. I remember when I was on the street, especially in patrol, man, you'd make 10, 15, 20 contacts a day with the public. So if you're back off and you take half the cops and they make 10, I mean, you're looking at over 1 million contacts a day that the police are having with the public. So over the course of a year, 365 million contacts on a low side, and you're taking 2 or 3 incidents a year and making that everything. I mean, the percentage of things that go bad are so minute, but that's what gets the attention.
Math is not in the favor of those that think that police are bad.
Right.
It's just not. So the last thing I want to talk about is obviously the initiatives that you work on. What you're about to be speaking for 4 hours tomorrow, which is, I mean, I like to talk. That is impressive. Or this coming week. So your mission is helping other officers.
Right.
And so what exactly do you do with that, and what are you doing to try to help?
Well, I give my story, and then I tell them some pitfalls they can avoid. You know, you don't want to be like me. You don't want to be sitting here talking to Anthony Russo. You just don't. And so I give them the pitfalls, and then I basically go into the resiliency of it, you know, because there's such a stigma in policing where you don't want to get help. I mean, we see some bad stuff over the course of your career, some stuff that other humans, number one, don't think go on in society. You can't, even when you tell it, and what becomes the norm to police, like you go home, they'll go, hey, tell me something cool. You know, somebody, your cousin's visiting or your nephew, and they go, tell me something cool, and you're like, man, I don't know, it's just another day at work. You forget about the dead body you pulled out here, or, you know, the crazy stuff that just becomes normal, and you become so jaded and so scarred up, basically. And then every once in a while things happen, and that brings that stuff out, and guys they just suppress it. Guys and gals, man, they just suppress it because you can't go talk to people in this profession. It just makes you look weak, or so they think.
Yeah.
But the mental health issue, that's a lot of what I push, the mental health aspect of it, because I'm not the only one that goes through these things. And since I've gone through this, I've had dozens of cops reach out to me, guys who are on trial, been to prison, been fired, been rolled over by their department. And some of it is their own doing, but a lot of it's not. A lot of it could have been avoided, just like our situation could have been avoided. And these guys, just the pressure that's on cops now with social media, with cameras, all that stuff, they just need to step back and go, okay, I'm still human. This badge doesn't make me superhuman. It doesn't protect your brain. It really doesn't. Your vest protects your body, but it don't protect your brain from all the stuff you see and hear. And so just push it, get help, reach out. Don't let it build up to the point where you become that bad cop.
Yeah.
Because you do snap. Some guys do snap. After so much, they can't take anymore, and they do something stupid.
So you mentioned the last thing, you mentioned pitfalls, the pitfalls you help from, and the fact that, you know, you wouldn't want to be the one talking to me right here. You'd probably rather be on the line of duty. What pitfalls could you have avoided in the Breonna Taylor?
Okay, so I'm not just talking about that day. I'm not talking about tactics.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in your life. Like I tell guys, you got to put your stuff in a trust, because when this stuff happens, they're going to come after you.
Yeah.
And they're going to find out where you live. They're going to find out your phone number. I've just gotten in with Officer Privacy, and that's a great organization, man. It doesn't cost that much. It's very cheap, very affordable. It's something you should do for your family, and it keeps them from going on the internet and finding your information. It hides it all. It protects it. Just stuff like that. When I'm talking about after the fact, they've got to document stuff. You treat this like a case, because it is your case. You're fighting for your own life. And unfortunately, what happens with cops is I'm willing to go out and fight for you that I don't know. I'll go out and get in a tussle and a fight and protect and do all these things. My partner's in trouble. I'm going code 3. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there and help him. But then when we take the uniform off and we get attacked by the press and by the public and by our department, man, so many guys just cower down. And I'm going, stand up and fight. Now's the time you've got to fight, because you're fighting for yourself. And a lot of these guys they don't know how. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to get the word out.
So that guy's picture went viral, the one that protected the girl stabbing the other girl.
Yeah.
And, LeBron James did that whole thing. So something like this would actually prevent that from happening?
It would prevent the doxing of the property of his house, because a lot of these guys instantly, I've talked to several who've had to move. We had to sell our house and move because people they'll harass you, man. It's unbelievable, the lack of respect and because there's a process. There's a legal process for everybody else. So why aren't we giving police that legal process and that the same respect that you give other people?
Yeah. Well, before we go, I'm going to give you a chance to do last words. And I know I wore the military one this time, the camo. But I think you went with this guy?
I think so, yeah.
So you're a BFD. You're a big effing deal. Again, as you said, you wish you weren't.
That's right.
But you're doing what you can with it to create the change that can happen. And that's why I started Be the Change, was the police shooting in Dallas. Yeah. And there's the 5 police officers that were killed that day. I was like, we yell awareness in this country. We don't know how to actually step up and create change. And although you're not on the police force anymore, you're still doing something to help your fellow police officers, which in the end helps everybody.
Oh, yeah, it
the
does.
better the police force, the better our society is.
That's right.
So do you have any final words? And again, just repeat again where people can find your book and all that stuff.
No, just keep supporting the police. Don't support the bad stuff. We're not asking that. But when you see them out, thank them for their job, because it is a thankless job. It really is. But the main thing is just don't jump to conclusions. Let the cake bake, man. Let it play out before you take a side, because you're not going to hear the truth up front. I don't care what side it's from. You're not going to hear the truth up front. Let the evidence come out. The book, you're going to get a lot of information out of it, a lot of things that we couldn't discuss today, just don't have time. 12 Seconds in the Dark, it's on Amazon.com, and Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. You can get it there, and it goes to a great cause.
I love that you did a perfect job of creating the cliffhanger for people. Like, we didn't cover a lot, but make sure you go check out the book for the rest.
right.
And it's an interesting story because there's something interesting about knowing that we've just been misinformed for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
And people still continue. And if you want to have a real conversation like this, information is your greatest weapon.
That's it.
Plain and simple.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. And we're going to end with before I give my final words on this, I want to make sure we cover My Patriot Supply, who is also an affiliate for the show. If inflation is wiping you out, which we all know it is, and unfortunately Joe Biden just lowered gas prices, my Lord and Savior. If you're cutting back, trying to make ends meet, food prices have doubled and are going higher. Same with prices at the pump, minus this last month. Things are just getting worse, period, as we all know. You can fight inflation by getting affordable, delicious emergency food storage. We recommend My Patriot Supply, of course, America's largest emergency preparedness company. They've got inflation fighting offer, which you can save $150 for a 3-month emergency food kit. All you got to do is go to preparewithbtc.com. Again, that's preparewithbtc.com for your 3-month food kit. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give my final words on this. I know we've had a lot of police officers. I hashtag back the blue. I also believe as though a civilization needs some kind of boundaries and some kind of protection against criminals. And I've gotten flack for this in the last couple of weeks. I will give the benefit of the doubt to start with the police officer and not the criminal. This doesn't make me hateful. This doesn't make me racist. It doesn't make those friends of yours that feel that way. Ultimately, when we look at our society, there is a massive criminal influx that is happening to us, whether you can say it's a spiritual war, a holy war, a lack of proper policy. We don't know what it is, but all I can say is it'll start to change. We'll start to move the needle when we can be willing to realize police are incredibly important, and even if you go with 99% of them are good, it will absolutely change the way we view the people around us and crime, and it can actually start making our lives a little bit better. So thank you guys for watching. Please continue to share, subscribe, go to patreon.com/BluntForceDiscussion. If you like any of the gear, one of our favorite shirts and most sold is, of course, the Unvaccinated Lives Matter shirt, not to be confused with the ones that tear down cities. But I hope you guys appreciate it. AwakeNotWokeStore.com. Use Awake for 15% off. And as always, thank you for being a part of Blunt Force Discussion. All right, guys, it's Anthony from Blunt Force Discussion. We're adding a little addendum to the end of our episode with Sergeant John Mattingly. Since we recorded, some things have changed a bit. There was the DOJ, handed out some indictments, and John is going to give it a little update of what is going on and what his opinion is on it. Because I know the DOJ, he was not a huge fan of the DOJ when we talked, but is there more to it? So, John, give us the update if you can.
Yeah. So Thursday morning, I was in Oklahoma at a narcotics conference talking, and my phone started just blowing up at like 7 a.m. People going, "Hey, you okay? Are you okay? Have you seen what's going on?" I was totally oblivious. There was no heads up on it, which is normal. And they were like, "Man, the FBI just raided 4 of the locations on 4 of the officers involved in the case." And I was like, "Well, who were they?" And one was Brett Hankinson, who had already been on trial and state trial and beat that. And then you had Kelly Hanna and Josh James, who were the 2 that wrote the warrant. And then you had their sergeant. And I was like, well, why did they arrest Brett again? We kind of figured they might for show. I think it's going to be very hard for them. It's an uphill battle for them to convict him because, the state court's already shown through 12 jurors of his peers that he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, they deliberated very short time, and we're a very liberal county. And I was shocked that, a short deliberation came out with a not guilty verdict. And so the feds jumped on this just to have somebody that on scene that they could hang out. And then the two that wrote the warrant, this is the one that got me. So I had a feeling this was going to come down, at least with Josh, but then I wasn't sure about Kelly. And what happened is Kelly had got caught up in a different situation called Slushygate, where her and a couple of guys were riding around throwing slushies on homeless guys. And that's a whole different story. But they got caught up in that, and the feds brought her in. And I think she told on them for that, and she told on her and Josh for the inaccuracies in the warrant that they were trying to place blame on me for. And so I got vindication as far as in the book where I talk about how the search warrant came about and my involvement in it, as far as they came to me and asked for information. But it didn't make me feel any better, because this whole time I took a bullet for these people going into this house, and then come to find out they were going to pin it on me, after the fact, to save their own tails because they screwed up. And I'd given them the benefit of the doubt this whole time. I had pushed off the DOJ and the FBI and wouldn't talk to them, because I thought, if they did something wrong, it's their job to find out, not my job to go in and rat somebody out. So I let the process take its course, and it did. And fortunately, the truth came out. Unfortunately, this truth coming out shows that we possibly should not even have been at Breonna Taylor's house that night. So their actions caused a ripple effect of many people, me being shot, the other officers being shot during the riots, all the damage to Louisville, the businesses, Brett getting charged and fired, now charged again, Miles losing his job. So the devastating effects of all of this is just mind-boggling to me, over a couple of people taking shortcuts and lying in a warrant. And that's disheartening, to be honest.
And I want to be clear. So if you look at the shooting in a bubble, because again, people are just going to hear headlines and stuff like that. If you look at it as what happened that night when you were there, take away the warrant when you were there, you knocked. There was no knock warrant. Well, that isn't changing. That part of that is not an indictment that changed. And once you were there, the situation that ensued was a justified shooting. That does not change.
Correct.
What changes is why you were there. And are you allowed to speak upon what exactly was the misinformation that caused them to get the warrant?
Yeah, well, from what I can understand from the indictments, and they're kind of vague in it, I can't wait for the rest of the stuff to come out to see exactly what was said. But the two things that stuck out were they knew that the postal inspector did not verify the address with Jamarcus Glover, which is exactly what I relayed to Josh, which is exactly what the Shively officers relayed to Kelly. And that's the conversation Josh and I had, saying, hey, this isn't good. This isn't valid. And he was like, yeah, Kelly told me. But then they go and put it in the warrant. So in my mind, I thought, well, they accidentally left it in. But then they met afterwards in a garage to decide how they were going to cover this up and say, no, I told them. And so, that I was taken aback by that. But the second thing that I heard is you have a certain time in warrants for them to not become stale. And generally, with an address was proven someone lives there, you want to do it within like 2 weeks, but you have about a month span where you can say they live at this location. We verified it through X, Y, or Z. And they hadn't done that. In January, they had that, but this is in March. So you've got a 2-month span, and they needed to freshen that warrant up a little bit to make it valid. And apparently Kelly put in the warrant, according to the indictment, which came from her testimony, that she said she looked in a program called Clear, which is what we use, Thomas Router's Clear, to verify addresses, phone numbers, things like that. She said she looked in that and found out and put in there that she verified it. He was in there from on February 20th of 20, which I think was an inaccurate statement. I think she just plugged it in there. So those two things together make this thing look very bad. Again, valid warrant when we served it, signed by a judge. We knocked and announced. Kenneth Walker shot first. We returned fire to protect life. So none of that changes that situation, but it does change the fact that, if these officers did the wrong thing, then they deserve the punishment they get.
And they were trying to conspire after the fact, and that is another part of the indictment. That's probably what took so long. I remember when you and I were eating lunch, you're like, what are they still doing? Like, why is the DOJ still on this? And now we kind of know why. And their investigation is a little bit more justified based on what we're finding. Again, this is an indictment. This isn't a conviction per se. But what is it showing in terms of you said they were conspiring to pin it on you afterwards. They were also conspiring to cover it up. Are they essentially just covering it up to make sure they were getting their story straight? Is that essentially the conspiring that they did?
Yeah, that's the cover up. The cover up was the postal inspector issue. That's the only thing I think that was in there. That and maybe the date, that February date I just mentioned. Other than that, there was nothing to cover up. There wasn't anything on scene that there was to cover up. It was just those actions that led us there. And I think that was the main thing in it. And again, the time frame, the Slushygate thing happened about 3 or 4 months ago. That came to light, and I think that's when this information started flowing in from Kelly, and she obviously gave a proffer and got some kind of deal out of this, because even Ben Crump said she's going to get up to 5 years, and the DOJ had grandstanded by letting him know the day before that this was coming down, yet they didn't notify our chief of police that this was coming down. So kind of bizarre to me that the DOJ would notify a civil attorney of what's going on and not the people who's employing these people.
The ripple effects of this are mind-boggling. You lost police officers. There was, and all of it was, and this is my last question. What would have possessed? Say that this is, they are convicted. This is true. These indictments prove to be exactly what happened. What would have been their purpose? Why would they have made that decision?
It would not have helped the case that much. They were looking to get more information on Jamarcus Glover and maybe find his money and stuff. But at the end of the day, if you get him with the drugs and guns and the courts aren't prosecuting him anyway, why are you going to take the chance and lie and put other people in jeopardy? It's just kind of a waste. It's sad. It was unnecessary. And I hate that we're even in this position and talking about it.
Was Breonna Taylor actually I know 2 months or 3 months had gone by. In retrospect, now that, we can play armchair quarterback from a bird's eye view, was she still involved? Like, was she innocent from Jamarcus Glover, or because I know she was running with a new boyfriend?
No, she still had his money at her house that night. He was on the jail phone calls talking about it. Hey, send so and so over there to get my money. She still got $14,000 of mine. Yeah. And the girlfriend or the baby mom at the time was mad and was like, "Why is she holding your money?" And he said, "Well, she holds all of our money. She got several people's money." So we don't know what was in the apartment. The attorneys or Vice News, if you watched it, came out and said we went in and stole the money. Well, we never even went in the apartment. So it's just a bunch of misinformation thrown out there that confuses everything and makes this thing look bad all around, which I understand.
So it's a dichotomy. She's far from innocent. She was still part of this drug ring 100%, but based on the rules of policing, getting warrants, etc., she should not have been a part of this coordinated raid. Is that the best way to describe it?
She could have been, had they just put a little more effort into it on that end of it. I think the majority of their focus was on Jamarcus Glover and Elliott, which is what the mayor's office was pushing. And the news story came out yesterday where the city is suing to get eminent domain of a very old church that's in that same neighborhood, so they can take it and clear it out so they can finish building their stuff. So they were just using the police as that, and they're showing their cards a little bit now. But yeah, we should never have been there based on the evidence they had that was just stale. The evidence was there, but it was just stale. They needed to freshen it up some.
Got it. Well, doesn't paint a good picture for those that love to jump on the anti-police bandwagon. But Again, to be clear, knocked, this doesn't change. You knocked, you announced. It was a justified shooting. They shot first, and you took one in the leg. That part doesn't change, to be clear. It's the other stuff that is again tragic and unfortunate, and paints a bad picture to some people on the Louisville PD.
Right, and to be fair, the DOJ even said that in their indictment, so that we were justified in what we did. So I can be mad at them all I want, but at least they got that part right.
Love it. Any final words again on this addendum or extra portion of Blunt Force discussion?
Nah, I'm good.
Nah. All right, take it easy, guys. Thank you a lot, John, for clearing that up. I think it was important. It's interesting timing that it was handed down this week, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the rest of the show. Thank you guys for always watching and supporting, and we will catch you later.